QRI. This is the QRI 5 help list. It's kind of a checklist which I have created so that you can be very successful when you administer your QRI 5. You will have all the necessary data collected. First, you have some materials that you need. You need the clipboard, and I recommend a clipboard because I do not want the student to see what you're writing. You hold a clipboard and you hold it up so that they cannot see exactly what you are writing down, because then they will be distracted and more interested in what you're writing instead of answering and reading for you. You need some pencils. You need the word list. Now, you can print them out of the book on the pages, or you can print them off of the CD. You will be using the analogy list as well if you do first grade or below. You need the word list scoring sheets where you identify if they knew it automatically or just identified. Make sure you write the word they say if it is said incorrectly. You need your passages. You need the passage scoring sheets. And I recommend that you tape record the students' responses. And that is so you will have accurate information when you complete the data. Make sure you greet the student and make them feel very comfortable. And what I do when I have my clipboard, I automatically tell them who I am, what I'm doing. Thank you so much for helping me out with my class. And this information will be used to help you and maybe to help them as well with the instruction in 569. And I tell them that I'm going to be taking notes, but please don't pay any attention to my note taking. And when we start, I start writing on my clipboard. They're like, well, God, really hadn't said anything, and it makes them more at ease. You start with word lists 2 grade levels below their grade placement. So if they're in 3rd grade, I'm starting with the 1st grade word list. You give the directions for the word list, and you present 1 card at a time. Now you have the choice. On Moodle, I have a PowerPoint with the word list, so you can show them 1 word at a time on a PowerPoint. Or I also have the word list where you can print them, and you show them 1 word at a time. You score their responses immediately, and you mark them either identified automatically, that means they said it within 1 second, or they identified it, but it took longer than a second. Self-corrections are not considered an error for me. If they self-corrected, that means that they do know it, but they don't know it necessarily as automatic as they should, and it would be an area that I would recommend that we work on. You count the number of correct responses, and then you label the level of performance as indicated on the bottom of the sheet: independent, instructional, or frustration. You have to find the independent, instructional, and frustration level, all 3 of those levels, for their word list. If a student read a 1st grade word list or below, be sure to administer the analogy word list. You don't have to administer the same regular word, just the analogy word. Then you're ready to begin the passage. I use their independent level word list. So whatever they scored independent level on that word list, and so say it was 1st grade, their independent word list was 1st grade, I find a narrative passage with pictures at the 1st grade level. I read the directions for the concept questions. I score it immediately. You have to have read the passage to be able to score the concept questions. So make sure you've read the passage, then administer the concept questions. If they score 55% or higher, you go on to having them read orally. If they score less than 55%, you need to ask them the prediction task. Once you finish the concept questions, and if necessary the prediction task, you have the students read the passage orally. While they are reading, you have the sheet where you mark their miscues. You mark their miscues. If there's omissions, you circle it. If there are insertions, you do the caret and write the word. If they do mispronunciations or substitutions, you write the word they say over the correct word. If you have to tell them a word, you put teacher told on top. I do not encourage you to tell them words. Please try to get them to read it without you having to tell them. After they've read the passage, you remove it from them and you ask them, I want you to retell the story as if you're telling it to someone who has never heard it before. This is where you're going to need to have the recording. On the score sheet, they will have all of the elements that were in the story. I find it difficult to move around on that chart paper trying to find exactly where they said it, and I number them, 1, 2, 3. Well, it's still very difficult and time consuming. So I, on another sheet of paper, write what they say, and then I will go back at my own convenience later and mark the retelling and put a number on the score sheet in the order in which the students said it. I want to know if they said it in the sequential order, or if not, if they moved from the end of the story to the front of the story to the middle, or where, because then it will be an area that I would need to address later. Then you're going to ask them the comprehension questions at the end of the passage, which needs to be scored immediately. We're now looking for an overall rating. The overall rating in their performance on that passage is based on their oral reading miscues and the comprehension questions. The lower level is the one that trumps. So if in their passage and miscues they didn't have any miscues, so it was their independent level, but on the questioning section they scored instructional, the overall passage score is instructional. If they scored frustration in the passages in the oral reading with too many miscues, but they scored instructional on the comprehension questions, the overall score is frustration. You are required to find all 3 levels: the independent overall score, the instructional overall score, and the frustration. The independent level I want to know so that when they are selecting books from my library, the school library, they have free time to read, they're reading at their independent level. I'm providing instruction on the instructional level, and I want to know the frustration level because I never give students material at their frustration level. Once I have found their narrative instructional level, I give that same level in an expository text. I want to know, can my students read narrative and expository on the same level? We are required with Common Core to provide 50% narrative, 50% expository text, so I need to know if I am having my students read at the appropriate level. I follow the same format: concept questions, prediction task if they score less than 55% on concept questions, which means are they familiar with the content. They do an oral reading. I record their miscues. I ask them to do a retelling as if they're telling it to someone who's never heard it before, which that doesn't have to be scored immediately. And then I ask them their comprehension questions. Again, the overall rating is based on their oral reading miscues and comprehension questions. If a student is reading silently in their classroom, one of the passages needs to be administered by having the students read silently. I do not mark miscues if they're doing silent reading. I have them do the retell and I have them do the concept questions. I want to compare their performance. How did they perform silently versus orally? I then thank my student for all of their help. If at any time your student becomes extremely frustrated, you stop and start again another day. Hope this was helpful.